Okay, well, today we're talking about pre-professional health education and gaining acceptance to professional programs. And there are many students who are in high school and college that want to be in health-related fields, whether it be on the professional, paraprofessional levels, and they don't know anything about amateur radio. And if you try to get them in amateur radio once they've started their degree programs or their lives, their work lives, their family lives, it's going to be hard to do. So we're trying to get some word out by producing this YouTube video today that is going to talk about this subject. And we'd like to help those and assist those that might be interested. Because if you want to be a healthcare field professional, paraprofessional, you really do need to polish your experiences to separate your application apart from others. And most applicants have fantastic grades and exude educational determination. They do observation visits in offices, they volunteer, they do research. And STEM education is always wonderful. It's great, but it lacks in needed areas because you should be focusing on your people skills. Sometimes students get so embedded in their academic environment that they, especially to get into a professional school, they sort of don't realize they need to focus on their communication and interpersonal communication. They want to be involved with patients. You have to have a bedside manner. So aside from the IT side of healthcare and maybe some researchers, it's a very people-centric profession and allows health and healing through your empathy and quality of patient compliance. So the healthcare hams at Marco, us, have unique volunteer opportunities for you to work cooperatively, remotely, of course, with an international group of healthcare professionals on projects that will assist you in developing your communication skills in the context of health-related education that benefits the public and enhances applications for professional degree programs. Now, we do have a publication. It's an international publication of the Medical Amateur Radio Council. And I'm going to just drop one and talk about that. This is AA4FL identifying for the Medical Amateur Radio Council Grand Rounds in the Air, open to all amateur radio operators and those who want to become amateur radio operators that might be listening by web stream or otherwise. And we encourage your involvement. We're going to go ahead and pause one before we talk about the ether. So the ether is an online quarterly publication. It includes health-related subjects and amateur radio subjects as well. It's written with a multifaceted target audience, so members of the public as well as members of our organization. And due to this focus, it's written in hypertext, very heavily involved with links to more extensive material because we want it to be a self-directed read where the depth of exploration of the chosen subjects meets the needs and interests of the audience, because not everyone's interested in the same subjects. And that's not only true based upon whether or not you're a health professional or not, because even health professionals have that consideration. If you're a cardiologist and there's a periodontist talking about a different subject material, you may not want the exact same level of depth of read. So by making content available through links to external research material or original articles written by authors that might be members, that implements the strategy of communication, bringing the word and thought value towards making an impact when it's a topic that you can select that depth of the read. You can view the publications and the editorial approach right now through the marco-ltd.org website. It's marco-ltd.org. So we do have an editorial board, and we value student volunteers. We'd love to have students volunteer. So there'll be information available to that. The ether itself, when I say that it talks about medical subjects and ham radio subjects, it's kind of unique in a different way, because often the approach that we take, our members are a very interesting group of professionals. We have members with all kinds of backgrounds, and when you look at the world with different sets of eyes, you bring real value and depth to an exploration on a subject. For example, when we wrote about World War I and World War II and the diseases that were involved in these battles and wars, and how medical science improved and patient care improved from that, we went into an explanation on radiation sickness, World War II. And the approach that we took was looking at Japan and the cultural impact it made on their society as they went through firsthand these radiation burns, radiation sickness, and what came from that. I mean, what changed in their society? Well, Godzilla changed in 1954 after fishermen got exposed in the Mariana areas, not Mariana, oh my gosh, I'm coming up with a blank right now, but northwest of where I visited in the Pacific. But in the Pacific, some Japanese fishermen got exposed to radiation from one of the bombs that was set off the nuclear tests, and one died and others got sick. So their society became very focused on radiation sickness. Between that and Hiroshima, and Godzilla was a way of expressing it, taking monsters in their culture and making one that's enhanced by radiation exposure. So in the ether, not only did we write about the medical slant on that, but we also wrote about the cultural slant, and we included links to Godzilla movies and maps about the exposure rates from Hiroshima, the region, Marshall Islands. That's where we're talking about. Anyway, that's just an example that the journal itself, or the publication itself, is very dynamic and well worth pursuing by all amateurs, and certainly well worth students being involved with the production. I'm going to pause one here for ID purposes. This is the Medical Amateur Radio Council Grand Rounds on the Air. That meets every week at this time, open to all amateurs. Do we have any late check-ins? Make your call to AA4FL. Do we have any comments before I proceed with the presentation? And I should say that it's a discussion. It's a net. It's not really a presentation. We're having roundtable, and we're just trying to weave in propagation, and we also have people checking in on NetLogger. So we have multiple approaches here. We're happen to be using a Zoom simulcast today as well. And again, the diseases that we discussed, and we're talking about radiation sickness, was actually a Veterans Day program that we did on Grand Rounds of the Air. So we'll often pick thematic Grand Rounds on the Air, Veterans Day, well, again, just about any holiday. July 4th, we had a program on medicine and healthcare in 1776. And we made those into YouTube videos for the public. So we're really trying to find ways to bring value to us being an ARL affiliated club, and let the world know that amateur radio is vibrant and well worth participating in. But the Grand Rounds on the Internet is our weekly non-commercial shortwave radio interactive discussions of these health-related topics like we're having today. And we can have students be part of the team that prepares the presentations. It takes quite a bit of research. And if we can get the word out to college students or even high school students who are interested in health-related fields, it will bring value for them and value for us. It always opens our eyes, seeing the world in a different way. It's an additive assistance there. They think of different things than we do. We're all biased by our backgrounds or influenced by our backgrounds. So why not involve some students in that? It would certainly be very helpful to separate them when they apply from all the others in the pack for professional school. So we often augment these radio-based transmissions like we're doing today by Zoom, but always by web stream. Everything's recorded on web stream for future consumption. Not all our members have HF stations that are capable of 20 meters. And even if you did, propagation, the vagaries of propagation, it's not always kind to us. People on the West Coast have a hard time on 20 meters this time of the sunspot cycle. Consuming these nets or being involved in the nets. And by having the web streams, it allows it to not only be live, but also recorded for future review. And I'm sure it's much appreciated by many of our members and the general public. And thank you very much, Chip and 5RTF, for doing those recordings for us. But not everybody knows that amateur radio operators are licensed individuals that partake in international hobby in a non-pecuniary manner. It's not for money. Then the on-the-air transmission component requires a license. And that's actually should be an easy test for high school and college students. They're brilliant. They have all the tools they need to get their technician license and beyond. And we'd like to be able to assist those upon request, but how do you get them to be aware of amateur radio? There's a lot of competing hobbies out there these days. And think about the type of people that are interested, that sort of an engineering bent, like working with computers, and that's the point. We have computers, we have Legos, we have robotics. Maybe they have a little bit of a lure. They don't realize that amateur radio ties in to all those different aspects. And we just have to get the word out. We have to represent them. We have to make them aware and why there's value in being an amateur radio operator, and how they find value in membership in Marco once they become a health-related paraprofessional or professional. They provide social opportunities for members and families to connect with those that are like-minded. So we have live and recorded web streams, as we mentioned, that Chip has done, and we're putting that in a database now. So we've already had a long list for this year of recordings, and not only have we done the web stream recordings, we also have a half dozen video recordings on topics. But we hope that everybody will find those. We're going to get those up on the new website, make it very easy and consumable for you to participate. However, I'll point out to all of us here on the air, the web stream can be recorded and listened to. It's being recorded and streamed live, marcoaudio.net, marcoaudio.net. And I know those of you that are hearing this don't necessarily need the web stream. However, realize just because you're hearing my voice doesn't mean you're not going to hear other members that offer input in our discussion segment. So you might want to still have that web stream today up and running so you can hear all the participants. And this is AA4FL for the Medical Amateur Radio Council of Grand Rounds on the Air, a weekly net that we have here for the Medical Amateur Radio Council. Are there any questions from the medical amateur public right now on 20 meters? Please go ahead and direct your questions to AA4FL. Well, I hear someone tuning up, so I don't know if that means we're going to have a question or not, but we'll give some more chances for the interactive discussion. But we also take the presentations when we have something very targeted and of interest to the general public and try to make YouTube productions out of them. And think about it. I mean, Chip did a program last week, N5RTF, about being on the spectrum, the autistic spectrum, and the effects of that. That's a very well-needed topic for YouTube listeners or YouTube viewers. So that will come up on their searches. The value of the Marco presentation or the Marco discussion now becomes one that's available to the entire world. We similarly had a very nice presentation on the brain aging and neuroplasticity by K4RLC, Bob, who is in Raleigh, North Carolina. And that one, it had 455 views already. And it was only published 2 months ago. So that was a NAT that became a hybrid Zoom session that became a YouTube production. So you can get out to college and high school students if you properly package the information. And that's one of the goals for today. But we are a club of the ARL, the National Association for Amateur Radio. And we're the only medically related club with the ARL. If you go to the ARL club search area and put in medical, you will only find the Medical Amateur Radio Council. And we've been a club since 1966, but we recently affiliated officially. Even though we offer scholarships, have been offering scholarships for years. We have 2 scholarships, one that's targeted more just towards individuals going to healthcare professions. And we have a new scholarship that is a combination of individuals that are interested in medicine and flight in honor of KD4GUA, Warren Brown, our recently departed member on his 100th trip around the sun, who is the standard bearer for what excellence should be. We are going to have a scholarship in his name. But we're a hobby with many paths. We have members that are that are flight surgeons that work with NASA. And I was on a digital net one time, and he did a check-in from Moscow. I remember Keith, WD9GET, Keith Brandt. And he's similarly checked in from Star City. So we're a vibrant group. Many of our members are involved in emergency communications. A lot of us like other aspects of amateur radio as well. We're, again, a multifactorial, multifaceted hobby. There isn't one amateur radio hobby. It's a collection of many interests. And of course, we have member and guest discussion. We have individuals check in on the nets. We moderate these nets, and we request that people add their name to lists so we can have on-the-air comments. We'll ask for discussion lists. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pause for a moment here, because we are going to start with the next portion of our interactive net today. And that's hearing from members and telling a little bit about their experiences with amateur radio and their professional programs, or just their upbringing as teenagers, and the depth that amateur radio brought to their budding careers and their life, and how that occurred. So let me drop one again for ID. This is AA4FL for the Medical Amateur Radio Council Grand Rounds of the Internet. Before we start our interactive discussion, let's add anyone to the list that might want to be involved in those discussions. Let me know, make a call. Okay, I do have 4 to 5 members that are also going to be participating. Some live here on 20 meters, and some that I'll be doing the paraphrasing of their comments, or reading their comments that they sent in by email but can't be here with us today. So we're going to start with Chip, N5RTF, who was a member, just to summarize, a past president of Marco. And Chip had positions that had ham radio connections to them. Of course, once he became a ham, he interacted with others, but he also had experiences of being in New Orleans during the time of Katrina. Maybe not on the day of Katrina, but his hospital was. And he's going to talk about that momentarily as well. Just you're talking about another Renaissance man that's with us. Go ahead, N5RTF.
Well, hello, everybody that's on the air, and also the people that are listening to the Zoom meeting. I was telling Jay earlier that my life has been anything but a straight line. Never had any idea that I would go into medicine. I started out with an interest in electronics. My father and I put together a night kit CB when I was 12 years old. I became interested in the circuitry and started teaching myself electronics. At 15, I got my novice ham license. And at 16, my knowledge of electronics got me a job at the local medical center in the Department of Cardiology as an electronics technician. While I was working there, I was able to see healthcare professionals, physicians, nurses, all up close and firsthand, and thought, well, maybe I could do that. And so I went to college. Didn't do a lot of ham radio while I was in college, which Jay was alluding to earlier. You're just too busy. But I did go to medical school, and I worked while I was in medical school in cardiology research. So I kept my hand in with electronics. And then later in residency, got my ham license renewed and started talking to folks in Marco. My chairman of neurology was Dr. Bob Courier, who was past president of Marco. And I recognized his voice on the air and asked him about it at the medical center. And he invited me to listen in and join Marco. And so I quickly moved up through general and advanced and extra class so that I could be a full member and take part. Now it's a lot easier. There's no code requirement. and the general class license is just a multiple choice exam. I think being a ham has made me a better clinician in the sense that I have a lot of troubleshooting skills that I developed in working with electronics. Nothing ever works like it's supposed to the first time, and I was able to get into electronics and also computers at a time when you still needed a soldering iron. So I was able to learn how things work and think my way through a problem. And I took that same set of skills when I started working with patients to recognize conditions that maybe were not obvious. And it's been a good career. I'm retired now, but wouldn't trade anything for what I've seen and done over the years. So I think that's about it. Jay mentioned Katrina. I evacuated for Katrina, but came back. I was asked to come back and work 2 weeks later, and so I was in sort of the mopping up period. Again, the only communications that were available, there were a couple of 2-meter ham repeaters that were still up. Everything else in the city was pretty much down, which just shows you the beauty of having a totally redundant system that's not based on public infrastructure. N5 RTF.
Okay, thank you, Chip. N5 RTF. This is AA4FL at the mic. We appreciate the presentation, Chip. I was at an annual meeting where Chip was the speaker talking about Katrina. And when Chip says he wasn't there during it, and remember, as a psychiatrist, a lot of the heavy duty problems are after, not during. So, Chip, thank you for everything you do for your community and for your patients. This is AA4FL. We're having a discussion on applying for pre-professional programs. And you can see by Chip's presentation that amateur radio can bring a lot of depth to your background and can separate you from the pack when it comes for applying for school. In this particular case, it was a little more indirectly, not in a linear fashion. For me, it was a little more of a linear fashion. And I'm going to just, again, pause one here. This is AA4FL, the Medical Amateur Radio Council, and just ask for any late check-ins or comments before I move on to presenting and telling a little bit about my story. Okay, no other late check-ins or comments at this time. We'll continue to have interactive discussion during our net here in a roundtable, as much of a roundtable way as one can have on 20-meter HF. But for me, as a young ham, we started at about age 13, and quickly moved up to extra by age 15. I was already well established as a ham by the time school came around. But fortunately or unfortunately for me, I was kind of a different person. Didn't have a lot of personal skills, interpersonal skills at that time. Not that I was a hermit or socially inept, but it certainly needed a lot of polishing to apply for professional school. And I was very young. I was applying. I was already in college at 16 as a sophomore, and actually was applying for dental school at 18. Graduated at 19 and was fortunately accepted. I think amateur radio probably had a big part in why I was accepted. Being that young, it showed that you had your act together. It separated me from the crowd. But at that time, I was also involved in the emergency radio corps down in South Florida, and that also, I'm sure, assisted on my CV. And fortunately, I was accepted. But actually, in a strange sort of way, the dean of admissions had a daughter that was 6 months older than I was, but we were both pretty young. So perhaps he could justify his daughter's acceptance. Both of us got into a very competitive dental school. But amateur radio went on to be a part of my academic career as well. When I was undergraduate, I became a member of the club here and was able to socialize and make connections. I don't know if the faculty knew what to do with me. I'm very good friends with the faculty advisor at the time now, but I could still remember the look on his face in talking to me. You know the way young people can be when they know everything there is about the world, or they feel that they do. And I certainly fit into that category. But many jobs held and positions gained directly benefit from the amateur radio background. Between college and dental school, I was in South Florida, and I just needed something to do for 6 months while I waited for dental school to start. And I just walked into a department store, and I got hired on the spot when he said I was a ham radio operator. Of course, it didn't hurt that the manager of the store was a ham radio operator. Generally, back then, and to a degree now, if you were an amateur radio operator, you had a reputation. There weren't that many. I was only 15,000 extras at the time. I was an extra. But being, starting from young and all the way through dental school, I was able to be involved academically after I finished dental school. And there was that period of time where I had children, and probably 25 years where I didn't operate very much. I got involved in organized dentistry. I'd been vice chair of the Council on Communications of the American Dental Association, which took me to Chicago often, and the same here in the state of Florida. And it has brought a lot of personal satisfaction, but a lot of sacrifice that I wasn't able to partake in the hobby. You can't do everything. But when I finished in Chicago, I was able to come back to Gainesville and spend more time. And of course, Chicago was just a very part-time gig anyway. You were coming in and out of town, but you had to balance your work career at that time as well. And in doing so, I was asked to become the faculty advisor and the trustee of W4DFU at the University of Florida, something that I did both for about 10 years. Decided working with PhD engineering students with having a chemistry degree wasn't in the best interest of the students. I asked one of the other faculty to do the faculty advising part, but I'm still the trustee, which I personally can justify because the radio station's on the 11th floor of the dental school building, so I get to protect the turf. But it's made life very interesting for me. I get to work with people from all over the world. It's almost like you're an ambassador. I mean, nobody represents the University of Florida as individuals, but from an amateur radio perspective, I do. And things like satellite projects, if it's a small sat, CubeSat, I've got to be involved in a few. That I was asked to be the person to get the license for the radios that were in orbit. I work with different teams of students through the years. So amateur radio has been a big part of my professional life, but the most joy that I get out of it, and I do work chase DX, but even so, the Medical Amateur Radio Council, the fraternalism, and having a good core of friends from all across the country in the world takes priority to me even over working DX. I haven't been as much on the radio because this is my joy and passion right now. So that's my story, and I encourage those that are in high school and in college to consider getting involved with the Medical Amateur Radio Council now, do volunteering for doing research, or work with our editorial committee. I'm the editor of the journal right now currently, and help out quite a bit on the Grand Rounds of the Air. So we look forward to hearing from you, and all that information will be readily available. And you'll certainly separate yourself from the pack. You have a better chance of gaining acceptance to the programs that you're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and pause one. I don't see that Wayne Poole, K4 FWP, is with us this morning, but Wayne, are you here? If you are, go ahead. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and present the information that you presented to us. Go ahead. Okay, so K4 FWP is not with us today. Wayne is a radiologist, and he has some very interesting aspects to report. And what's interesting in the way, it's not just about how it enhances the medical school application, because it starts with the personal connections made when entering the hobby. And the high school amateur radio experiences can have a huge impact on educational opportunities. Think about it. If you're an amateur radio operator and you're in high school, you're with a group of like-minded individuals that are in all different walks of life. And they often have interests in many other STEM activities. I mean, you're generally going to be a STEM student, somebody that focuses on engineering and math, leading to your exposure to other disciplines and activities such as atmospheric sciences, physics, astronomy, photography, and electronics through amateur radio. So if you get involved, all those integrate into a career in the future. And when you do volunteer work with amateur radio, that enhances an application. I know in Wayne's case, that was the case. He was able to do all the above. So it wasn't the direct impact, but it was all those personal connections of being in the hobby. It wasn't that somebody saw in his application that he was an amateur radio operator and it overwhelmed him. It was all the activities that he did as an amateur radio operator that convinced the community. He had his undergraduate degree at BSEE, electrical engineering, bachelor's of science in electrical engineering, and a master's in biomedical engineering. And when he went to medical school, they recognized that and had that discussion during the interviews. But when he graduated, he chose radiology as the medical specialty, in part due to his background in engineering. Is there anyone here on the net that had a similar experience that you would like to talk about? Make the call to AA4FL and we'll start that discussion.
AA4FL and 4TSC.
Okay. We're going to turn the mic over to N4TSC for his input. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Okay, very good, Jay. I think the thread that we have here for people that are interested in going in a particular career direction is the thread is that it's curiosity. And you have to be open to opportunities. I'm kind of reminded of the song from the Beatles, "It's a Long and Winding Road." And my own introduction was basically at age 13, I got my novice license. I had an accident when I was riding a bicycle, and I broke my clavicle and my radius and my ulna, and I had my hands turned so that each arm was in a sling, and the only thing I could do was to take my time. I built a simple shortwave radio from a kit, and later on, I found others that had the same interest while I was in high school, and we scratched out a power supply on the back of a napkin, and I built it from scratch in order to make the VFO that I built from Heathkit to be able to operate. And I just sort of followed various different interests. I had an interest in magic and hypnosis, so I joined those clubs. I thought I might be interested in surgery, so I went and observed surgery at a place in New York that a doctor who had operated on my father was doing research on dogs and the effect of a nicotine and tar on the lungs. And I watched what he called a tracheal fenestration, and he added nicotine to the dogs, and it was interesting to watch. After the operation, the dogs, they wanted their daily dose of nicotine. And I was kind of struck by that. When I was in college, I joined the school radio and TV station, WALI, and operated with that. And after college, I became a teacher on a substitute basis. And I was teaching biology, chemistry, physics, and math. And eventually, I went to postgraduate education in radiation physics and got a master's degree at the University of Miami. But at the same time, I got a private pilot's license. And so when I went to medical school, I was sort of using my free time doing sailplaning. And when I got out of medical school, I started after internship doing orthopedics, and then decided that perhaps I would have a better career in ophthalmology, and I followed that. And then after retirement, I was involved with the HOA, the Board of Governors. And so all of these things, I think the link to all of them is just to be curious. And if you're looking for something that is a hobby. I remember one of the things that people talked about when we were in junior high school and high school is if you have a hobby and you're interested in football, that's not a good carryover hobby. If you want something that's going to help you throughout your life, find a hobby that you can continue on into your old age. And I think I found it because I'm guessing I'm at my old age now. Anyway, with that, back to you, Jake.
Okay, thank you. And for TSC, thank you, Jerry. Jerry is a very wise individual, brings a lot of wisdom to our board. He's a member of the board of directors. Thank you for everything you do for amateur radio and for us as an organization, Jerry. I'm going to go ahead and identify here. This is AA4FL for the Medical Amateur Radio Council. We're having an interactive discussion here. We're having a net, and we're making this roundtable here. That was N4TSC. Do we have anybody else that has a similar explanation of their involvement in amateur radio as a youth and how it helped them in their careers and get accepted to medical school? Make your call to AA4FL.
WJB.
Okay, we have WJB Andy here in the Columbus, Ohio area. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, well, I got my amateur radio license when I was 13. It was a novice class. And I was able to build kits to build the equipment plus bought some. And one of the things I learned, I had trouble as a young man going up to talking to people or communicating that I didn't even know. Yeah, and it helped me with that somewhat. I gave the hobby kind of fell out. Decided to go into medical school during midway through my undergraduate, and partially because of the interest of my uncle, who was a gynecologic oncologist. But one of the things I can say about amateur radio and teaching younger folks, some younger folks like myself didn't find it easy to go in and talk to people they didn't know that well. And that's when I did finally start medical school and was worried about walking in and doing my first H&P on someone. I walked in, I turned around and did my job, came out, and I said, well, this wasn't that hard. I wasn't scared of it anymore. But I think part of the reason was I'd learned via amateur radio some of the skills to overcome that fear of just communicating with people that I didn't know. So the other thing about amateur radio is it does kind of teach you teamwork. If you're involved in amateur radio clubs or get involved with Aries work or similar volunteer, you have to work with other people to do that. And many of our formal education programs at the junior high and high school level don't include that. Some do. Some of the better private schools certainly do, because I do have a nephew who has done that, but he's the only one. I got lots of nieces and nephews. So, but those things I'll comment on. I have lots of sub hobbies like some of the others, Jerry, and a few of the other ones. I also have a private pilot's license, which I've let go by the wayside. I wrote together with a programmer, I wrote a medical record system software that I used in my office for 10 years, me and 4 other partners. So electronics interest definitely has helped me in my career and helped me with the personal part that I didn't necessarily have when I was very young. So back to you, Jay, from WJB.
WJ8B AA4FL for ID, the Medical Amateur Radio Council, going around to the internet. And thank you, Andy. And again, thank you for everything you do for amateur radio and for your community as your family. I know you do have a family of many health professionals, and the service that they did during COVID was exemplary. Every time we talk about that on our digital net, I am amazed at the dedication of your family and how much they gave to their communities during the terrible dark days of COVID. Thank you very mumuch. So this is AA4FL for ID, the Medical Amateur Radio Council, grand rounds in the air. Do we have any other guests on the air on Zoom that would like to make comments about amateur radio and how it assisted them in getting into professional school or improving their professional careers? Go ahead and make your call to AA4FL. Okay, Whiskey Bravo 4 station, make your call again. Okay, we're getting a lot of QRM, unfortunately, right now. Whiskey Bravo 4, Mike Oscar Romeo. Let's try one more time again. I apologize, Scary, for the QRM. Go ahead. Gary, the QRM is extremely heavy right now. I apologize. I'd love to hear your comments, but we're just not getting through. Oh, the vagaries of having a net on 20 meters. Maybe we'll try again in another few moments. Did Dave, did you, KN0S, did you have any comments you wanted to make? Go ahead. Okay. Currently, I have some comments from Alana and Bob Conder, who are both PhDs, neuroscientists, neuropsychologists, K4AAC and K4LZ. Both their kids are hams. And Bobby, that's W4RPC, and Lauren, K4LHC. And they got their tech licenses as very young teens, actually. They had a photograph that appeared in QST magazine. And they both got their generals. Well, Bobby got his general at age 13, but the whole family participated in public service events like the Raleigh Marathon and the MS Walk, being that they're from Raleigh, North Carolina. And they reported that that really helped with public service requirements in the high school. But it also put their ham radio licenses on college admission applications. And the officers at North Carolina, University of North Carolina, did note it. It was very positive because it was very difficult. It was competitive to get in at UNC as undergraduates. And knowing electronics from a standpoint of the parents, Alana and Bob, it helped them in their career in neuroscience and neuropsychology because the brain itself is a transceiver. It's just low power transceiver, low amplitude with fuzzy filters, but all can be improved on. And Bob has helped us with presentations on the grand rounds on the internet on numerous occasions. And he's actually discussed that subject material. So that's it in our archives, and hopefully we'll get a chance to see that on YouTube. But having exposure to amateur radio definitely can help kids in high school and college with their careers. And as note, Lauren herself now is in a PhD program, I believe in the same career path as well, up in North Carolina. Let's go back, WB4MOR, if you're still there. Let's see if we're better from a standpoint of QRM. Go ahead and give a call to AA4FL.
Dialing up and down the band and just covered your net. Over.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I have you checked into the net here at WB4MOR. The QRM was still pretty bad on that go around, but we appreciate you being here with us, Gary. We meet every Sunday at this time, 11 o'clock Eastern. Even with the time changes, we stick to 11 o'clock Eastern. So we have topics that are related to amateur radio and health-related topics every week. We're glad you could be here to participate with us today. Thank you. Do we have any other members or guests that would like to offer some input on the subject matter of pre-professional school applications, pre-professional activities, college, high school as you prepare for professional degree programs, how it might improve your career? Go ahead and make your call to AA4FL. Well, in summary, I have no other comments, and then that's getting a little long here past the hour. Becoming an amateur radio operator while in high school or college can be a great way to enhance an application for a professional school. The hobby is multifaceted, offering experiences that allow the applicant to find a passion that not only helps with getting into studies of professional programs, but also to engage in lifelong hobby and opportunities, as Jerry mentioned, and for TSC. And hams are problem solvers. I think Chip pretty much summed that up in 5RTF. The type of students that can apply academic knowledge into practical applications, solving problems. And this can be very desirable to entering degree programs, but also once you enter the work world and on job applications, it can be on a CV. Being a ham as a problem solver is in high esteem. But from a standpoint of my comments, the interpersonal aspects of the hobby can assist in developing one's communication skills in the bedside manner needed for health professionals. And others have also, speakers today have commented on that as well. But I tell you, from working with dental students as a professor, a part-time professor at the University of Florida, working in the College of Dentistry with students, teaching them to do dental prosthetics. And there's a need. I mean, I spend most of my time working with them on their interpersonal skills and managing patients or interacting with patients and getting acceptance and getting two-way communication, both in the nonverbal and verbal way. Not that the students are short on that aspect of their life, but it helps to interact with faculty members with all different backgrounds. We all see the world through a different set of eyes. And educating takes a village, right? It takes all of us to get a complete practitioner. And I find particular joy and satisfaction in making sure that students know how to interact with their patients. But at this point, they're already in professional schools. And I'd love to see them experience some of that when they're in high school and they're in college, to learn the importance of nonverbal and verbal communication. And those are topics we cover in the ether and the grand rounds quite frequently. You really have to be balanced and show you can relate with people with empathy, and security. So thank you for everybody being here with us today. We're going to call the net to a close. I'm sure there are others that would like to make comments, but we're a little long here today. And please do send those comments to me. And we're going to be doing an article on the ether publication on the same subject. I'm going to go ahead and bring the net to a close for today. This is AA